Hey YouTube, this is Nina. I'm here tonight to read to you. We finished up on the U.S. history in brief on that was earlier today. So right now we're going to start on the lost tribes of Israel. Now I was going to start somewhere else, which was the, let me see, I have little pieces of paper, bear with me. Yes, I have my camera covered up. Don't judge me. I know that they're constantly invading spaces, and until I learn how to use it, I need to use it for a reading. I don't know much about this computer, and I've had it for 4 years, so I'm learning. I just learned how to change the cover pictures on YouTube. I uploaded the meet and greet, and my mouth was wide open for the thumbnail or thumb tag, whatever you call it. It was not flattering. Okay, so this is from the Bancroft Library, the library of the University of California. And this is a picture on page 8. I'm going to zoom in just a little. And it looks to me like some kind of decree. Okay. So as I said, we're going to start on the book or PDF, The Lost Tribes of Israel, the first of the Red Man. It's all The Lost Tribes of Israel, or the first of the Red Man. And let me go back. This is entered according to the Act of Congress in the year 1861 by Ch.1 in the Clerk's Office of the District Court of the United States in and for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. And we're going to start with the introduction. I don't really want to, but I don't want to miss anything either. A lot of this stuff is new to me, so I think that following it all would be a good idea. Now, it is a well-known fact that when Christopher Columbus first set foot on America's soil, he found it already tenanted by people which, though differing from his own race in customs and color, were as perfect specimens of humanity as himself and followers. And I'm using my quote fingers, as perfect as in himself and followers. Only intent upon new discoveries and animated, but by the desire of subjugating whatever new countries he might find to the crown of Spain, the great explorer regarded this new and strange people merely in so far as they might be used in furthering his own plans, troubling himself little about their rights or origin. So he's very selfish. Now, the extreme darkness in which the earlier history of our red neighbors is involved renders it next to impossible to penetrate the veil which enshrouds their origin, while it is almost needless to say that all that has been said or written about this certainly interesting subject is based only on conjecture and fiction. Yet notwithstanding all this, it is almost certain that the history of the earlier inhabitants of this country concerns us much more than hitherto we may have supposed. For unless we regard that book of books, the Holy Bible, as a mere work of romance and fiction, it is not to be disputed that the first and only human beings ever created by the Almighty without the agency of man were Adam and Eve, from whom all mankind are descended. And allowing this to be a fixed fact, our aborigines must have sprung from the same parent root with ourselves. If we follow the Holy Scriptures, we see the gradual development of the human race until we come down to the period of the patriarch Noah. Hold on, I'm going to try to fix this color. See if I can dim the light. Maybe that'll help. Don't mind the rattling in your ear. I was actually snacking. It's a good thing that I'm reading now, so I won't snack so much. Bear with me. Let me see if this is better. Okay. Who knew if I dimmed the lights that the phone wouldn't have those lines going through it? Okay. Now. Okay, so if we follow the Holy Scriptures, we see the gradual development of the human race until we come down to the period of the patriarch Noah. We all have read of the deluge, and we have seen that all mankind were destroyed with the exception of Noah and his family. How these latter were saved, we all know, but is it not wonderful that a man who never before even dreamed of a ship or the possibility of crossing a large expanse of water should all at once have become possessed of the idea of building the ark? It is most... Let me see. I'm trying to see why... Oh, might be me. Okay. That looks a whole lot better. I'm learning, y'all. Okay, so it most undoubtedly is, and the only way in which we can possibly account for it is that of the Bible. It was brought about by divine inspiration and under the special direction of Jehovah. And I think that's the hijack. Not sure, but I think it is. Let me see. Jehovah. I'm trying to scroll up, y'all. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Now, here then we have a striking instance that even in the oldest times, when science was in its infancy, God sometimes in a single lesson would teach and reveal to his creatures things which at a later period it took years and all the patience and ingenuity of man to accomplish. And in pursuing the history of the Israelites, the chosen people of Jehovah, we find that similar revelations have been very frequent. When the 10 tribes of Israel seceded from the tribe of Judah, The favors of the Lord were equally divided between the two nations. Okay. Both of whom either prospered or were punished according to their deeds. And the Bible continues to speak of either as the chosen people up to the period of the Assyrian captivity, when the record of the Israelites abruptly closes. Now, sometime after the destruction of Samaria, the kings and the people of Judah adopted the same evil course followed by the Israelites, and they in turn were given into the hands of their enemy, Nebuchadnezzar. And B.O.B. says something about giving the land back on this earth the earth mixtape. I have to look into that. Nebuchadnezzar, who carried them captive to Babylon. But after a season of suffering, and when it seems they began to repent of their evil doings, the children of Judah were liberated and permitted to go home and to rebuild their destroyed cities. Whereas of the 10 tribes of Israel, it is written, they were carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. And now the question arises, were the Israelites so utterly debased, so utterly abandoned as to be unable to return to the God of their fathers? I cannot and do not believe this, for not unfrequently we see that the greatest and most obstinate sinners repent of their wickedness and are pardoned. Why could not this have been the case with at least a part of the once chosen people of the Lord? And why should it be impossible that in the red men of our forests we behold the descendants of the lost tribes of Israel? The physical differences, particularly that of color, between our red neighbors and our own race, it is not very difficult to account for if we take into consideration, firstly, that the sons of Jacob in all probability were not so delicately organized, nor so white as ourselves, but mostly like were a medium between us and our modern Indians. And secondly, the many powerful agencies at the command of nature, sometimes these agencies are perceptible, as for instance the difference of climate, but oftener they are secret. And now and then we may see a person who has been rescued from the very brink of the grave, whose appearance and color after such restoration are so much changed that recognition becomes almost impossible. But let all this be as it may, so much is certain that our aborigines belong to the one great family of man. And if the Bible is right, they must be descendants of Adam and Eve. In the following pages, I have followed the children of Israel into their captivity, and after a season of almost endurable hardships, I have seen them brought to a just sense of their situation. I have shown how they repented of their former sinful life, and how in consequence they were informed in a vision sent by Jehovah of the only means by which they might escape their cruel oppressors. As the ark had been the means of preserving Noah and his family when all mankind were destroyed by the deluge, so a ship or ark became the means by which the Israelites were freed from their enemies. In a vessel constructed after a model seen by one of their number in a dream, the captives sailed down the river Tigris and under the direction and guidance of divine providence, they at last came to this country where they became the founders of the race of red men. I am not presumptuous enough to assert that my book has been written. Sorry about the shaking. My book has been written by divine inspiration, yet I may be permitted to say that as all our faculties and thoughts belong to and come from our Creator, it may not be regarded as presumption when I say that there is every possibility of my being as near the truth as most writers of ancient history. And that was by the author, Philadelphia, February 1861. Sounds interesting. And these are the contents. I'm going to try to, I need to set up some way to hold my phone steady. Let me see. Well, for one, I need to just put it down. Okay. And I'm going to try to keep it right here. Now, chapter 1 is the cot of the old Israelite. Chapter 2 is the startling revelations. Chapter 3, the dream. Chapter 4, Hermoin. Chapter 5 is determination. Chapter 6 is the flight. Chapter 7, the day after the flight. Chapter 8 is the departure and journey. Chapter 9, the first inhabitants of America. Chapter 10 is the death of Mordecai and separation. Chapter 11 is the ghosts and the solemn warning. Solemn. And 12 is the earthquake and its consequences. 13 is Omar and his friends. And 14 is Ch.1, the first of the red men. Ooh, are y'all ready? So we're going to start on chapter 1. And what I'm going to do with this book is try to do a chapter, a session. I just want to warn you. Tomorrow, I have a date with my husband. So I'm going to probably get back to it tomorrow night. In the morning, we have a lunch date. So I don't know if I'll be able to read in the morning. So I'm going to try to do maybe chapter 1 and 2 tonight. If not, just chapter 1. And y'all just bear with me. I got y'all though. Okay, so this is chapter 1. The Lost Tribes of the book, The Lost Tribes of Israel. Chapter 1 starts on page, is this page 11? Yes, it's page 11. Hold on. Yeah, page 11. Really page 19 if you count the pages before the introduction. So, y'all ready? I'm ready. Now, it was about 6 years after the destruction of Samaria that on a dark and stormy night of the latter part of the month of April, there were assembled in a small building near the ancient city of Nineveh, 3 men whose unmistakable types proclaimed them children of subjugated and captive Israel. Now the house, a dilapidated one-story frame structure situated in the midst of a well-cultivated and extensive garden, was inhabited by Mordecai, an old Jew with a bald head and a long flowing beard of snowy whiteness. Whose skill in the art of horticulture had secured for him this tenement at a reasonable rent, payable in flowers, fruit, and vegetables, and where he managed to lead a comparatively free and comfortable life. His only assistant and companion, a handsome youth of 18 years of age, in whose veins coursed the royal blood of Jehu, and who was called Old Mordecai, uncle, might have been seen about 2 hours before the opening of my story, disguised as a beggar, and his face concealed by a slouched hat, wending his way through several dark and narrow streets of Nineveh, until he came to a small but strongly fastened door in the rear of a magnificent palatial mansion fronting the principal street of the city. Arrived here, he sought the shelter of some overhanging trees, and putting both hands to his mouth, he imitated the shrill cry of an owl. Then, after slowly and deliberately counting 100, he repeated the cry, and throwing himself flat on the ground, patiently waited. At that instant, footsteps were heard approaching his place of concealment, and by the light of a shaded lantern he recognized one of the guardians of the night, who, since the arrival of the captive Israelites, patrolled the small streets and alleys of the town after a certain hour, and who generally were armed to the teeth so as to be ready for any emergency. Lamech, for that was the youth's name, noiselessly glided into the deep shadow of a large woodpile, and presently saw the man passing, cursing and swearing at the inclement weather and the uselessness of his toilsome task. Curses on these Jewish dogs, Lamech heard him mutter. Curses on them for a rascally thieving set. Were it not for them, I now might snugly and comfortably sit by my own fireside, listening to the sweet voice of my dear Melina. Ha! Should I once be fortunate enough to find one of this detested race where I could lay my hands on him, but by the beard of Shalmaneser, I believe it is best for me to go to my home, for in a night like this no cowardly son of Israel would dare to cross his threshold. My watch is not to be ended before the breaking of another day, and then I shall be at my post again. So farewell, storm and tempest, and welcome my own bright home. With this, that trusty guardsman kept on his solitary walk, and soon the sound of his receding footsteps died away in the distance. Lamech then came forth out of his place of shelter, and again approaching the small door, uttered the sharp cry of a dog 3 times in rapid succession. This time his patience was rewarded, for scarcely had the last note of his voice died on the air when the startled cry of a frightened cat fell on his ear. At almost the same time, a key was inserted in the aforementioned door, and a moment later Lamech found himself face to face with a swarthy man, apparently about 40 years of age. The newcomer, whose sinewy and well-knit frame might have been envied by a Hercules, was one of those rarely seen men whose whole appearance inspires respect and confidence. His open countenance and noble, lofty brow spoke of goodness of heart, while his finely cut but firmly set mouth denoted a firmness of character and a strength of determination which were not to be shaken. The first greetings over, and after a brief consultation, Hiram, such was the stranger's name, who served as head steward in the king's own household, followed Lamech up several other small streets until they arrived at another small private door, which led to the mansion of the king's prime minister, Almanzor. Here, they again succeeded by means of the same signals used by Lamech at the king's gate in quickly bringing out Nahum, the head groom of Almanzor. Give me 1 second. I'm going to take a sip. Okay. Is that a little better? Let me see. Is that a little better, y'all? I think so. Another brief consultation ensued, after which the trio, now hurrying on fearlessly, took their way straight to the eastern gate. Suddenly, the startling "Who's there?" of a night patrol brought them to a stand, and the leader of the guard, whose weather-beaten and sunburnt face bespoke the soldier of many battles, confronted them, and would without further ceremony have consigned them to the custody of his followers, had not Hiram uttered a commanding halt. Then, thrusting his hand in his bosom, he produced a roll of parchment covered with curiously shaped characters, and to the bottom of which was affixed the royal seal. At seeing this, the soldier bowed deeply, and in an attitude of profound respect, offered to our wanderers the services of himself and followers. Hiram, who knew what effect that parchment would produce, was still pleased with this turn of affairs, and requesting to be led out of the gate, then bade the guard return and resume their usual duties. As the reader may most naturally wonder how a simple roll of parchment could produce such an effect on a personage of so much importance as the leader of a night guard, I hasten to inform him that in those days of warfare, when the strictest watch was kept both by day and by night, there were some persons who through some means or other were favored with an unlimited passport sealed with the king's own private signet, and which authorized the bearer to go either single or accompanied by 1 or 2 friends, wherever he pleased, at any hour, night or day. And as all persons so favored were naturally supposed to be on the best terms with the king, the attention shown them by all public officials were generally equal to those shown to the ruler himself, as, moreover, it would have been punishment, dishonor, and even death to anyone who should have dared to question or disregard the royal will. Now Hiram had sometime previous succeeded in rendering the king a signal service in ferreting out and disclosing a conspiracy to assassinate the monarch by 2 of his chamberlains. The conspirators were secretly executed, and Hiram was favored with an unlimited passport at his own request, this seeming to him the most useful and consequently the most valuable reward, as the Israelites in particular were subjected to the closest and not unfrequently most painful surveillance. Safely out of the gate, our three friends hurried to old Mordecai's dwelling, where on giving a peculiar signal, these two strangers were instantly admitted, while Lamech remained outside and stationed himself in such a position as to guard most effectually the only approach to the house. After being warmly welcomed by old Mordecai, Hiram and Nahum were invited into an inner room, which was furnished in the simplest manner, and where the reader first made their acquaintance. Nahum was a man about 35 years of age, of medium size, rather slender, but an attentive observer might have detected an uncommon strength of muscle. His noble forehead, finely arched brows, overshadowing a pair of eyes fiery and black as the raven's wing, a Roman nose, a mouth almost feminine in its exquisite cut, and a well-rounded chin would have rendered him a fit model for the painter and sculptor as the personification of manly beauty. His hair and beard, both well cultivated after the fashion of his countrymen, were of the same color as the eyes, and while his frank and open countenance spoke of goodness of the heart, the determined curve of his upper lip denoted undaunted firmness and inflexibility of purpose. He was the elder brother of Lamech, and perhaps would even now have sat on the throne of his fathers had Israel not lost her independence. Mordecai was an old man of 70, and apparently had been very strong and decidedly handsome in glorious youth, but now he was a mere wreck. Care and sorrow had bent that once powerful frame. The sight of his dark eyes was dimmed, and his once glossy black hair was now shaved off by the hand of time, while his still long and flowing beard, once of the same color with his hair, had assumed the color of fresh fallen snow. Hiram is already sufficiently introduced to the reader, so as to make it only necessary here to say that he too was a descendant of the royal house of Jehu. "Children," commenced old Mordecai in a low and sorrowful voice, after all three had been seated, "I have once to you of the trials and hopes of our unfortunate brethren. To us they look for consolation. In us all their hopes and trusts are centered. You, my noble nephews, have already done much to lighten our burdens, to kindle anew the hopes of our desponding countrymen. By your perseverance and unflinching attention to your hard duties, you have succeeded in gaining the esteem and the confidence of the two most powerful men of this heathen nation. Thanks to you, the severest trials of captive Israel have passed. The terrible persecution has ceased. But when will captive Israel be free? When will we be allowed to pray to Jehovah after the manner of our fathers, publicly, openly, without fear of molestation, of even death? Shalmaneser and his prime minister are the two most powerful men of this nation. It is true, and equally true it is, that through you we may call them our friends, but they dare not openly act against the will of the combined masses, and these, alas, are against us. When when will the hour of Israel's freedom strike? Here the old man ceased, overcome by his sorrow and bowed down by grief. He sank back in utter exhaustion. I just made up a word. Excuse me. In utter exhaustion. A silence of about 5 minutes duration ensued, after which Nahum arose and advanced to his aged relative, whose hands he took and carried affectionately to his lips. And this reminds me of a movie that I've seen. I can't call it, but it'll come back to me. Uncle, he said in a clear, melodious, and manly voice. Uncle, nay, more than that. Father, let not your sorrows affect you thus. Are not, as you said yourself just now, our severest trials past? Are not we yet strong and healthy? Is not the whole universe a Canaan to those who but have the will to make it so? And above all, have we not our respected wise and good old Uncle Mordecai still among us? Who has ever done more to raise the drooping spirits of a nation than you, my father? You have given a new impulse to our hopes. When 3 years ago you disguised as an outcast and a beggar, bereft of reason, traversed this country, regardless of death and dangers that beset you on every side, to console our despairing brethren and to devise means for lightening their heavy burdens. We trembled, and on our bended knee we besought Jehovah to watch over you and lead you safely back. Thanks to God, you did return, and you succeeded in your noble mission. 200 strong and able men of Israel with their families are at this moment assembled in subterranean chambers constructed under almost insurmountable difficulties and with almost superhuman efforts beneath our feet. Thanks to your good management, all these people are sufficiently provided with everything needful, and although we do not know how you contrived to construct these subterranean vaults or to bring so many human beings safely, in spite of all the watchfulness of our enemies, to your greatly exposed cot, nor your final purpose may be. Still we know that the latter cannot but be for the good of Israel, and we here once more repeat the assurance that we shall be with you even unto death. Unto death? Repeated Hiram. What we may have done, resumed Nahum, to gain the goodwill of our masters was done by your advice, and happy are we if this will add to the interest of our unhappy countrymen. But what is that? Okay, so this is the end of chapter 1. I'm going to pick up in another video, chapter 2. I was tired. Now I have my second win. So bear with me. Peace and love, brothers and sisters.